Dear President Biden, I am writing to you to withdraw my nomination for Director of Office of Management and Budget. It has been an honor of a lifetime to be considered for this role and for the faith placed in me. I appreciate how hard you and your team at the White House has worked to win my confirmation. Unfortunately, it now seems clear that there is no path forward to gain the confirmation, and I do not want to continued consideration for my nomination at the distraction from your other priorities. I am incredibly grateful for your leadership on behalf of the American people and will for your agenda that will make such a transformative difference in people's lives. Sincerely, one person who didn't get what they absolutely and entirely wanted, Neera Tanden. Biden's reply: I have accepted Neera Tanden's request to withdraw her name from the nomination for the Director of Office of Management and Budget. I have the utmost respect for her record of accomplishment, her experience, and her counsel, and I look forward to having her serve in a role in my administration. She will bring valuable perspective and insight to our work. That's called losing. That's called Neera Tanden losing. That's called Neera Tanden wanting a position, greatly wanting a position, so much so she would sit down in a chair and people she's ridiculed, talked about, vitriolically slammed, sometimes slandered over the course of God knows how many years, get to sit and pass judgment. So you want something now. You want to get the seat of Office of Management and Budget. Okay, let's have a conversation about the things that you've done over your life. Let's have a conversation on the things that you've said, the activities you've engaged in, the money that has been stuffed into your pocket, and the positions that you've taken, the people who you've slandered or attacked, and the reason you've slandered or attacked them, the viciousness that is seen in the way that your faction of the Democratic Party does politics. Let's have that convo. And she was willing to sit there and take it in the face over and over and over again with nothing more than just the logic of her wanting that spot, her wanting just, to taste that spot. Kept her there. Joe Manchin comes out. Yeah, I don't think this is going to work. I don't like some of the things she said about my fellow senators, including Sanders and including Mitch McConnell. I don't like it, so I'm not going to vote for it. Romney comes out. Yeah, they're not going to get my vote either. Susan Collins comes out. Yeah, she's not going to get my vote either. And you have it. Joe Biden's first major loss. He couldn't get Neera Tanden across the finish line. She sat there day in, day out, took the slings, took the punches in the face, took the back and forth, only because she wanted it. And at the end of that process, she didn't get it. Her losing makes me feel good. I didn't even have anything to do with it. You can call it bitter. You can call it spiteful. I would just call it honest. Her losing makes me feel good. It touches something in me to see her lose on that such a level, such a national, prolific level, where she did everything in her power and yet failed nationally for everybody to see. Yes, her losing makes me feel good. And I understand me saying that gives some kind of context into who I am as a person, and that's fair enough. I've never said that I was a perfect human being, whatever that standard is. I'm just telling you that the thing in my brain that recognizes this kind of fairness, this kind of balance of an equation type thing, or even an enemy getting just desserts, goes off. And I feel great. There's some people that have this weird perspective that Neera Tanden losing has something to do with her color of her skin or the vagina that she's sporting. I mean, these things are just quirks of reality. But they're trying to make the argument that it's something to do with those things, not the content of her character. And I am making the point that Neera Tanden was judged entirely by the content of her character and found lacking. And I would make that point, especially from the standpoint of the left. And I would even explain to you why the left is laughing with me right now. The left doesn't think this video is mean-spirited. Democrats will think this video is mean-spirited. The left laughs with me. They get it. They understand it. There's a deep sense of satisfaction. The lies that MSNBC were spewing and CNN were spewing and the Justice Democrats were spewing that somehow the left was on board with Neera Tanden. We took umbrage that she was even offered that, because it gets across the level of disdain that Joe Biden and this administration has for the left. That's where the left was. So the idea that the left was somehow on board for this is nonsense. And it gives you some notion to TYT, Cenk Uygur, Justice Democrats, and where their head is. It is not in the same place that the left's head is. Uygur was on Twitter and whatnot fighting on behalf of Neera Tanden. Now that is utterly ridiculous, and it's utterly sad to see such a thing. I think I compared it to the wife with the freshly black eye pleading the case to the cop for the husband that's standing there holding the belt with the freshly bruised knuckles because he had just hit her in the eye. And there is Cenk Uygur pleading the case of the guy that just beat him up. I'm going to explain why she lost. I'm going to explain why the left is happy about this. And I understand that some libs like to go to this notion of, oh, it had to be something about her vagina that did this. It had to be something about her color that did this. It had to be something about the fact that her left, her middle toe on her left foot is longer than her big toe. No. In this very specific case, you can go down the list and figure out why people dislike her. And yeah, she lost on her own merits. One more thing. There was a thing dealing with a reporter, I believe it was for the Washington Post. And you had liberals, woke liberals, who basically call everything racist and sexist, being entirely racist and sexist, as they attacked that reporter for asking that particular question. She did her job in asking the question to Lisa Murkowski, showing her a picture of basically something Neera Tanden said that was mean-spirited. This kind of gets to the point that I'm trying to get at. It was the issue of the thing that she said that was the problem, not the fact that the reporter did her job and asked her about the bad thing that she said. And yet, her mailbox and Twitter feed and social media was full of woke liberals that claim everything is racist and sexist, being very sexist and being very racist. Many of them very stupid. The woman is Korean, and yet they're screaming at her as if she is Chinese, using Chinese racist epithets and whatnot as they addressed her. Yeah, you got it backwards. This person right here, this sad person, this sadly, poorly misinformed person, Neera Tanden is being forced to pay the price for all the women of color who stood up, spoke truth to power, and beat Trump. I have no doubt that she'll land on her feet and do great things. But it's wrong. And we should speak up. And we should stand with her. We should stand with her. That's the way it sounds in my head. I'm just being honest. My wife always said, where do you get those voices from? That's how it sounds in my head. Let's do it again. Neera Tanden is being forced to pay the price for all of the women of color who stood up, spoke truth to power, and beat Trump. I have no doubt. Because in my head, she's getting worked up as she's going through this. She's getting very upset. And, it's getting that much more defiant. I have no doubt she'll land on her feet and do great things. But this is wrong. And we should speak up. And we should stand with her. Gets more resolute at the end. Joyce, you're badly misinformed. Either you're badly misinformed or a Democrat with a warped perspective of the world in regards to the way Tanden behaves. You can entirely drop the context of how the woman has behaved, the things that the woman has espoused, the things that woman has said, and go with the idea that it's all her color or her vagina that is doing this. I would make the point to you that it's neither of those things. It is absolutely entirely her. She failed on her own merits because she spent her entire life saying vile, vindictive things to various people across the political spectrum on the left and the right. I want to go into this just a little bit, not even entirely through the entire point. But I'm going to make the point to you, Joyce, on why she failed. And again, had nothing to do with her race, had nothing to do with her sex, had nothing to do with her age, had nothing to do with the size of her mid-toe. It had everything to do with her. She failed on her own merits. And the failure on her own merits, the energy that she expended sitting there as they went after her, one after the next, throwing back her own sins, it makes me feel amazing. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas, and this is going to be a mean-spirited soapbox. This show is brought to you by you, and you can support this content through PayPal or Patreon, and I thank you for doing so. Yeah, I've been following this issue. I was bothered by the Justice Democrats basically lying, claiming that the left was somehow on board for this woman, or stretching whatever it means to be the left to somehow encompass this very specific case. I was dismayed that Cenk Uygur, supposedly home of the progressives, was on Twitter basically trying to fight hard, putting on his gloves for one Neera Tanden, again, the battered wife, pleading with the cop for the husband to not be dragged away. And even from the standpoint that basically what seemed to be taking place was that CNN and MSNBC was removing the voice of the left and substituting it with people who are telling people what the left thinks. It was nonsense. It was propaganda on its face. That woman outing a sexual assault victim, and this was on my head, I was just scribbling it out. Outing a sexual assault victim, punching Sanders' campaign manager. This is when he worked for Center for American Progress. He said something about Clinton, or asked a question about to Clinton that she didn't particularly like. Vile comments on Libya, the vile commentary on Libya, that Libya should have basically paid the United States for basically destroying Libya. You have this indignant situation of a black president, first black president, presiding over a situation they call slavery in another country. Astonishing. And now we have the case that's going on in France with Sarkozy, where they're investigating him under this notion that Gaddafi, the guy that his future successor, ends up getting murdered, working with Obama and Britain. I believe it was Cameron at the time. The smash mouth politics of Clinton, that particular crew, not allowing Nina Turner to talk at the end of that campaign in 2016. She stepped down to back Sanders. They thought it was a betrayal, and because they thought it was a betrayal, they wanted to send a message. They didn't let her speak when it was for the DNC convention. She goes walking out. She's sad. She's forlorn. And basically, she's like, yeah, they're not letting me talk. Tulsi Gabbard, in the way that they shamelessly attacked her at every particular opportunity. Again, she stepped down. She backed Sanders. They went after her entirely. That propagandist slush fund that they call somewhat of a newspaper that basically takes money and crushes progressives. And those people who pay her get a great deal out of it, considering that they can crush progressives and they can seemingly come in as if they're coming from the Democratic Party. And they probably are coming from the Democratic Party. But that gets it that much more, that the party is not representative of the left. And to be brutally honest with you, all of this could be red lines, depending upon who you are. Each and every one of these things. The slush fund in and of itself is problematic, meaning the money, the fundraising that takes place from Neera Tanden's standpoint. And I am one of those people that believes that cash affects policy. I think it would be weird for people not to believe that. 90% of the races are won by the side with the most cash. Yeah, of course, the cash is going to have an influence on those individuals in the races, since they know that 9 times out of 10, getting more money means that they're going to win the race. Policy is not even there in that particular equation. Of all of these things, though, the tax on Sanders is enough. Call it petty, call it vindictive, again, call it whatever you want, I'm just calling it honest. Bernie Sanders was running for health care, meaning universal health care, to 26 million people that weren't covered under the last third-way Democrat, her faction of the party. The goal of the left was to cover those people by having a program that was cheaper than our current healthcare model. Yeah, that won basically in the polling, and yet was ripe for continued attack by one, Neera Tanden and people like her. You have this other situation, $15 minimum wage that Sanders was fighting for, expansion of Social Security, elimination of student debt, free college. This is basically America's agenda. If you look at the polling, all of these things poll well. Increased taxes on the uber wealthy, all of these things poll well. This is America's agenda. And she and her faction of the party attacked viciously that agenda. And then when Joe Biden gets in office, the modest stuff that he was talking about, like the $15 minimum wage, even that stuff is off the table. Even the $2,000 get whittled down to something else. I'm making the point that you attacked the guy that was actually trying to deliver for the American public. And in the context of this particular situation where nearly over 500,000 people have died, the paucity of Joe Biden and third-way Democrats are inadequate for this situation. You attack the guy mercilessly that was. Yes, that in and of itself is enough for me to be vindictive. But like I said, the other stuff is in and of itself enough, especially from the standpoint of the left, who finds this stuff utterly and entirely detestable, each and every last one of these things. This, for example.
All right, let me get to another issue that concerns me very much. I happen to believe that big money interests have an undue influence over the economic and political life of our country, that too often campaign contributions are what determines policy rather than the needs of ordinary Americans. And according to the Washington Post, since 2014, the Center for American Progress has received roughly $5.5 million from Walmart, a company that pays its workers starvation wages, $900,000 from the Bank of America, $550,000 from J.P. Morgan Chase, $550,000 from Amazon, $200,000 from Wells Fargo, $800,000 from Facebook, and up to $1.4 million from Google. In other words, CAP has received money for some of the most powerful special interests in our country. How will your relationship with those very powerful special interests impact your decision-making if you are appointed to be the head of OMB?
Nobody is going to answer this question with, well, I am not going to do anything that would jeopardize the relationship, the fiduciary relationship of those particular businesses. And as much as possible, I would lean into their particular interests until we can find an agreement on the language that I can use at this particular organization versus the language they would accept, where they would continue to send me the cash. Nobody's going to say that, but that's closer to the truth. And then you have this situation, and like I said, this is put this way, but it's being put this way because this is kind of how she's seen.
You were a very aggressive fundraiser for your think tank. Mm-hmm. And that's, I'm not suggesting you did anything wrong. Please don't construe my remarks as suggesting that. But there will be a perception. I'm not saying it's reality, but as we know in government and politics, perception matters. But there will be a perception that if you took Wall Street, given the money you raised from them, if you took Wall Street, turned them upside down and shook them, you'd fall out of their pockets. Will that, how are you going to deal with that? I mean.
Now that is, he's putting that in a bit more of a